Well, let's get more on this now with Peter Zalmayev, Director of the Eurasia Democracy Initiative. He's live for us in Kiev. Welcome to you. Thanks very much for joining us here on BBC World News. So the man with no political experience, a man who has played a president on a TV show, is going to become the real president. What do you put this success down to? Why have people voted for him so overwhelmingly?
Well, just like your correspondent said, and I agree with it, the vote for Mr. Zelensky would rather a vote against the entrenched elites, and specifically against Mr. Poroshenko and what he stood for. I would say that I am convinced that Mr. Poroshenko was probably one of the most effective post-Soviet Ukrainian presidents over the last 25 years, and still that was not sufficient for the electorate that was simply tired of politics as usual. And in that sense, Ukraine is part of a pattern that we've seen around the world in Western democracies. We saw it in 2016 in the election of Donald Trump. Then we saw it in the vote for Brexit. We saw it in the emergence of populist figures in Italy, like a fellow entertainer, Mr. Beppe Grillo. So this is very much part of the pattern that we've been seeing.
So what next? Mr. Zelensky appears to have very few clear political policies.
He's very thin on specifics when it comes to economics. He's very also thin on specific when it comes to how Ukraine will continue dealing with Russia's aggression. And besides that, Zelensky has a huge task ahead of him, and that will be to disassociate himself from Mr. Kolomoisky, as himself an oligarch who has said to be behind Mr. Zelensky candidacy. A lot will depend on the outcome of the October parliamentary elections and whether Mr. Zelensky will be able to have a coalition in order to help him govern effectively.
Yeah, does he have the people around him with enough political experience to help him lead the country effectively? Because the people who voted for him want to see change. They don't want the old elite in power. So he's got a lot to do. He's got a lot to prove, and I guess quite quickly.
Quite quickly, exactly. Ukrainians are notorious for being fickle when it comes to their idols. It takes about 2 months for them to grow disappointed and disenchanted with their leaders. Zelensky has to hit the ground running. So far, I've been reassured that some of the figures that he has announced will be his aides, will enter his government, are mainstream figures. Some of them are reputable. So the hope is that he will that the team effort will be sufficient to cover for his inexperience in politics.
Okay, Peter Zalmayev, really good to get your thoughts today. Thank you.